There was no cloud in the sky in the morning, and it looked like the day would be calm. Sister Chiara was getting ready to do her regular door-to-door visits, which she both loved and stayed away from. It took bravery and a lot of patience to knock on people's doors and talk about faith. Chiara, on the other hand, knew how to get close to even the most closed hearts with her peaceful smile and natural calmness. After morning prayers, she left the convent with a small shoulder bag that held rosaries, prayer books, and a few pages of Bible readings. As she walked through the maze of private alleys, the neighborhood streets were still quiet and the sound of church bells was getting fainter. She knocked and waited, and many times she talked to people of all ages, each with their own story and problems. But on that day, something very special was waiting for her. After visiting several houses, Chiara found herself in front of a home that seemed to have a peculiar mood. The house was simple, but well kept. It had a small yard and a strong wooden door. As always, Sister Chiara crossed her arms before knocking, but her heart beat a little faster for no reason. The door opened after a few seconds, revealing a man who immediately shattered her composure. "Chiara," the man said, his voice filled with surprise. His dark, deep eyes widened slightly as an unsure smile appeared on his face. Chiara was silent. It was Marco. She recognized him instantly, despite the years that had passed. His hair was a bit shorter, a hint of a beard on his face, but those eyes were the same ones she had looked at with love so long ago. The past, which she thought was dead, had suddenly returned with overwhelming force. "Marco," she whispered, his name slipping from her lips like a faraway echo. For a moment, the silence between them was deafening. Then Marco, restoring his natural ease, stepped aside, inviting her in. "I can't believe it's you," he said, shaking his head in disbelief. "This is incredible. Please, come in." Chiara hesitated, but finally crossed the threshold, her heart pounding harder with each step. Marco's house was warm and welcoming, with simple yet nicely chosen furnishings. A cream-colored sofa dominated the living room, while landscapes and a few abstract works hung on the walls. "I never expected to see you like this," Marco said, watching her as she removed her hood. "You're a nun now. I never would have dreamed." Chiara sat on the edge of the sofa, trying to regain her calm. "Life takes us in places we can't foresee," she replied with a strained smile. "And you? How have you been?" Marco sat down next to her, resting one arm on the back of the sofa. "I can't complain," he said. "Work, travel. I try to live my life as best I can, but I never thought I'd see you again, Chiara. And certainly not like this." His words carried a special weight, and Chiara couldn't help but notice the nostalgic tone in his voice. "I'm here to bring the word of God," she stated. "I go from house to house, trying to share a word of hope." Marco smiled. "I hope you're not trying to change me," he said jokingly. "You know I was never much of a fan." Chiara lowered her gaze, recalling their old talks. Marco had always had a realistic view of life, often in contrast to her unwavering faith. But it was precisely that difference that had drawn them to each other so many years ago. "I'm not here to convert anyone," she replied gently. "Just to listen. Sometimes a little is enough to make a difference." Marco studied her closely, as if trying to decipher something hidden in her face. "You know," he said, "you haven't changed. You're still the same Chiara, with that look that seems to see beyond things. But there's something different about you, something I can't quite explain." Chiara felt herself blush slightly. "We all change, Marco," she said. "The years pass and events shape us, but it's true that some things stay unchanged." He smiled, moving his weight slightly closer to her. "So tell me," he said in a lower, almost personal tone, "what led you to make this choice? Why did you decide to leave everything and become a nun?" The question hit Chiara like a bolt of lightning. It wasn't an easy answer, and she knew this talk was about to touch deep emotions. Taking a deep breath, she began to explain. "After us," she began, carefully choosing her words, "I felt lost. I thought my future was clear, but when you left, I had to face a void I had never felt before. I tried to fill it in so many ways, but nothing seemed to work. Then one day, I found comfort in prayer. And the more I prayed, the more I felt there was something bigger calling me, a road I had never considered before." Marco heard in silence, his face unreadable, but his eyes filled with emotion. "So it was me," he finally said. "I'm the one who pushed you toward God." Chiara nodded slightly. In a way, yes, but not in the way you think. The pain I felt taught me so much about myself. It showed me that there's a bigger love, a love that goes beyond what we can imagine. And for that, I'm grateful to you, Marco. Because without you, I would never have found this road. Chiara's words seemed to leave Marco breathless. For a moment, silence filled the room. But behind that outward calm, something was shifting. Marco suddenly stood up and walked into another room. "Wait here," he said, his tone carrying a hint of surprise. Chiara was left alone, her heart racing. She didn't know what Marco was doing, but she felt that whatever was about to happen would test everything she believed in. The quiet in the room was deafening as Sister Chiara waited for Marco's return. Every second seemed to stretch, and with it grew the feeling that this moment was more significant than it looked. Chiara glanced at the pictures hanging on the walls, trying to distract herself, but memories of the past resurfaced with irresistible force. The smiles, the laughter, the plans for a future that never came to be. All of it returned, blending with the present like a dream she couldn't wake from. When Marco returned to the room, Chiara felt herself pulled out of her thinking. He was wearing only a towel wrapped around his waist. His wet hair suggested he had just taken a shower, and the smile on his face was filled with bold confidence. "Do you remember those warm days at the lake?" he asked, moving closer slowly. "The ones where you dive into the water and say it was too cold, but I'd pick you up and carry you in anyway." Chiara tried to look away, her heart racing wildly. "Marco, this isn't proper," she said, trying to stay calm. "I'm not that person anymore. My life has changed." Marco sat on the sofa beside her, closing the gap between them. "Maybe you've changed," he said, his tone soft but full of hidden meaning. "But some things never really change, like feelings." Chiara stood up suddenly, trying to regain control of the situation. "I can't stay," she said, her voice shaking. "I think it's better if I leave." But Marco stood as well, placing himself in front of the door. "Wait," he said, his tone now more serious. "Chiara, listen to me. I'm not trying to hurt you. I just want to know, are you sure you made the right choice? Are you sure this life you've picked is really what you want?" Marco's words struck her deeply, like a blade touching wires she thought she had let go of. For a moment, she felt torn between two worlds, the past she had known and the present she had accepted. She looked into Marco's eyes, looking for an answer that could resolve the conflict within her. "Marco," she began, with a calmness she didn't fully feel, "what you're feeling now isn't love, it's nostalgia. It's the memory of something that no longer exists. My path is no longer tied to the past. It's connected to something bigger." Marco stared at her, his smile slowly fading. "So you don't feel anything for me anymore?" he asked, his voice almost a whisper. Chiara closed her eyes, seeking power in a silent prayer. "It's not about feeling nothing," she said, opening her eyes with a look full of sincerity. "I cared about you, Marco, and a part of me always will. But my heart belongs to God. He is my love, my shelter, my strength." Marco took a step back, lowering his eyes. He seemed struck by her words, as if he had finally understood something that had eluded him until that moment. "Maybe you're right," he said after a long silence. "Maybe what I feel is just an attempt to hold on to something I've lost. But I can't forget you, Chiara. I can't stop thinking about what our life together could have been." Chiara felt a pang in her heart, but she knew she had to stand strong. "Marco," she said gently, "life doesn't always give us what we want, but it leads us to what we need. I found my way, and I know you'll find yours too. But we can't go back. We can't change what's already happened." The atmosphere in the room seemed charged with intense energy, as if the past and present were merging in that moment. Marco ran a hand through his hair, his face marked by conflicting feelings. "I respect you, Chiara," he said finally, his tone filled with deep seriousness. "I don't fully understand your choice, but I respect it. And I hope you find the happiness you're looking for." Chiara nodded, feeling a mix of relief and sadness. "Thank you, Marco, and I wish the same for you. I want you to know that, despite everything, you were an important part of my life. You taught me so much, and for that, I'll always be grateful." With those words, Chiara walked toward the door, feeling as though something inside her had finally let go. Marco stood still, watching her leave, knowing he could never change who she had become. But in some way, he felt that their talk had closed a circle, allowing him to accept the past and move forward. As Chiara stepped outside, the warm sun encircled her like a hug. She felt stronger, more sure. She knew she had overcome one of the greatest challenges of her life, a test that reminded her of the value of her vocation. As she walked down the driveway, a prayer of thanks spontaneously flowed from her lips. She had faced the past, and now she was ready to fully live in the present, her heart firmly turned toward God. The walk back to the Abbey was long and silent for Sister Chiara. Each step echoed within her, as fragments of her meeting with Marco played over and over in her mind. His words, his look, his vulnerability, all intertwined with memories of a love that once seemed eternal. "Are you sure you made the right choice?" Marco's question kept repeating, like a refrain she couldn't ignore. It wasn't the first time someone questioned her vocation, but this time was different. Marco wasn't just an external voice. He was the symbol of her past, of what could have been, and of what she had chosen to leave behind. At the convent, the golden light of sunset bathed the walls, and a sense of calm seemed to envelop everything. Chiara stopped in front of the main door, taking a deep breath of the cool evening air. She stepped inside with determined steps, but when she reached the chapel, she knelt before the altar, letting all the emotions she had held back to finally surface. "Lord," she prayed softly, "today I faced a temptation that shook everything I am. I saw my past, and I felt the pull of what I once thought was love. But you gave me the strength to resist, to see beyond the moment and remember what truly matters. I ask you, guide me again, strengthen my heart, and help me live with faith along the path I have chosen." The words of her prayer brought her an unexpected peace, as if an invisible weight had been lifted from her shoulders. She remained kneeling for a while longer, letting that peace seep into every corner of her soul. When she rose, she felt different. No longer torn between the past and the present, but whole, complete, ready to continue her journey. In the following days, Sister Chiara resumed her activities with renewed determination. The memory of Marco was still vivid, but now she saw it in a different light. It was no longer a regret or a source of doubt, but a test she had overcome. A piece of the puzzle that had shaped her into the woman she was today. One afternoon, while distributing food to needy families in the area, she met a young girl who seemed troubled. "Sister," the girl said timidly, "can I talk to you? I need advice." Chiara sat beside her, listening closely. The girl shared how her boyfriend had left her and how she felt her life had lost all meaning. "I can't stop thinking about him," she admitted, tears streaming down her cheeks. "I feel like I'll never be happy again." Chiara took the girl's hands in hers, looking at her with kindness. "I understand," she said. "I felt that pain too, that sense of emptiness that seems impossible to escape. But I want you to know that there's always a road, even when we can't see it. Sometimes pain prepares us for something bigger, something we can't yet understand." Chiara's words seemed to touch the girl's heart, and she nodded slowly, as if starting to see a light in the darkness. "Thank you," she whispered. "Maybe there is hope after all." As she watched the girl walk away, Chiara felt deep gratitude for the road she had chosen. Even her own pain and loss had led her to that moment, to that ability to help others. Every step, every sacrifice, every task had prepared her to be a guide for those at a crossroads. One day, Chiara got a letter. It was from Marco. It didn't contain words of regret or requests for forgiveness, but a sincere message of thanks. "Chiara," it began, "thank you for opening my eyes. Thank you for showing me what it truly means to love, even when that love cannot be lived as one might wish. I'm trying to bring order to my life, and your words have helped me understand that I need to let go of the past to accept the future. I wish you all the happiness and peace you deserve." Chiara read the letter several times, feeling that for Marco too, that chapter was coming to a close. There was no longer a need for regrets or apologies. Both of them had found meaning in their separate ways. Life at the convent continued, with its daily difficulties and small moments of joy. But for Chiara, each day was a chance to renew her choice, to remember that true love wasn't just a feeling but a gift that required sacrifice and commitment. As the sun set behind the hills, Chiara stopped in the convent garden, watching the sky turn shades of orange and gold. With a heart light and full of peace, she whispered a simple prayer. "Thank you, Lord, for showing me my way. Thank you for the love you've given me and for showing me how to give it in return." Sister Chiara's story tells us that temptations, no matter how challenging, can become opportunities to strengthen our faith and rediscover what truly matters. Love, in all its forms, leads us toward our deepest truth, if we have the courage to listen to it and choose what makes us whole. If you like this story, leave a like, subscribe to the channel, and hit the notification bell so you don't miss the next videos. Let us know in the comments what you think. Would you have made the same choice as Sister Chiara? Would you have had that courage? Share the video with your friends.
Subscribe to our channel and turn on the bell notification for more stories like this, and give this video a thumbs up. Click on this next interesting story.